What's up, AC?
What's up, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. We got you crystal clear, man.
Good, good.
Yeah, hey, so
What's good?
let me do a little quick intro. So this is my best friend right here. This is my bro. You know what I'm saying? We go back like Jerry Curls and Pink Cadillacs, you know what I'm saying? We go back like
I hear you.
chiropracts, you know what I'm saying? We go
I
back
hear you,
like
man. Yeah,
we go back like wired bras, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
funny.
that's my boy John. You also hear me refer to him as G. Gordon.
What's
Used to be in the military
all right?
a long
What's going
time
on,
ago.
John? Nice to meet you, man.
Pleasure, brother. I heard good things about you, man. I'm glad you're joining, man. It's
Hey,
gonna be nothing but good stuff, man.
hey, anytime I can get together and have a chit chat, man, it's good.
Yeah, AC is a solid ass dude, man. And he's kept me honest on more than one occasion from a professional standpoint. Tapping in with your boy a couple times. In the last maybe 90 days, he's called and checked on me quite a few times and back and forth. I told him on the last one, he's like, hey, anything you need. I'm like, all right, I might have to hold you to that, Negro. And then, fast forward the clock. So, but yeah, AC is super cool, man. Super cool. Um, Kind of similar situation with me and you, G, as far as the vibe. Like the vibe that the other person is giving off is so genuine. It's so, you know, in my days, I can see his aura. you
I
know,
appreciate the kind words, man.
yeah, yeah, solid. Now,
Yeah.
so G was just kind of rapping about the latest and greatest encounter he had, spiritual encounter, otherwise he had with some family members.
Yeah.
Breaking ground on a lot of generational stuff, breaking ground on a lot of little tension, little stuff that looms in the background with regard to families and loved ones or whatever. So he was
Yeah.
just kind of giving an account. That's the part you double dutched in on. He was kind of giving an account of what happened last night.
Yeah.
All right, G, my bad. Just got to get that in there. Go ahead and hit us with the
No,
premise.
it's good. The premise in which I'm talking about is the thing that I put out is that one, accountability is not judgment, and good intentions does not void you of accountability.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, like my dad, he promised this. My dad has never been able to have all his kids or raise all his kids. So my daughter, or his only daughter, my sister, is coming into town. He promises her this big wedding. He thinks he's coming up on some money. He's trying to be the hero. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And do something that he wish he'd never been able to provide something special for his kids like this. So he's like, God done blessed me with the opportunity. I'm going to do it. Problem
Yeah.
was he oversold, right?
Mm.
So he oversold and overreached out of wanting to be grandiose. My sister, she's just like, I never thought this was going to happen. So I'm finna take it for a ride because this is a dream come true I never thought was possible. The problem was she wasn't realistic and didn't drop her price. He offered like
Mm.
20K. He ain't never had money like that to offer for a wedding or anything like that. So he moving in the house. So he reached. And then as
Yeah.
things were crumbling down the pipe and money had to go elsewhere with the new house and different things like that, stuff
Yeah.
started to look funny. Well, he's not communicating that to my sister all the way. And then he's telling me it's a different price that he owes money. And then he's telling my sister's fiance to be that this is really what we owe, and don't tell your sister. Don't tell my daughter. So now you just compromised this fiance or husband to be to lie to your daughter as his future wife
Yeah.
about information, right? Just because you're trying to get it fixed. So the long and the short of it was you went out on your own understanding and tried to add faith on the back end.
Yeah.
So add the spiritual, God will provide it, God will do this, but did you ask God or did you ask your daughter what they need? So
Yeah.
there's these family issues of disconnect. She's moving for the first time, all these, big hoopla. It's really monumental moment. The thing is, I had to explain to her, like she had a part to play in her accountability.
Yeah.
She could have offered to say, you know what, 20 is a bit much, 18. I'll go for 7 because I was just going to go to the courthouse.
Yeah.
6, 5. You didn't do that. Cause you blame dad because you dream big, and I wouldn't have dreamed this big if you would have never brought it to my table. So it's that healing that was necessary. My dad, when they had to change venues and he wasn't honest to her, when they just drove across country from Virginia to California,
Mm.
everything that they had, all this big move, and so they run out of money. The wedding has to get canceled because my dad loses his deposit money because he didn't cancel it in time because he was trying to wait. He doesn't tell her because they could have done stuff to raise money along the way, and then just drops the ball like, "Yo, man, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball." And then now she's got to tell a bunch of people not to come to this wedding or to
Mm.
rearrange it, right? But the problem, I give that backstory because each party had accountability to play. Fair enough. The good intentions that my dad had, he overreached.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, but he didn't acknowledge the fact that he lied to her. When he finally told her the truth about what's happening, you don't acknowledge the lie. Well, then he
Yeah.
starts each day having to run around, like
Yeah.
handle errands. And she's building up like, I need to talk to you, blood. Like about what you did foul because I'm supposed to live with you now. I just moved cross country and you weren't transparent with me. And we trying to build our relationship as father and daughter because it's being distant. So
Yeah.
I'm having to teach her you can't start out with a lie. You got to be your authentic self in order, no matter where you go. That was a carry on from our last conversation. And like pretty much long and short, I had to tell her X, Y, and Z. This is how you have to talk to this man because he lacks experience. He has good
Yeah.
intentions. This is where you lack experience. And this is where you guys can meet at the middle, being that that's our father. This is how you can, if you want to be right or do you want to reconcile with your dad? And
Yeah.
so he chose to reconcile. And there's more to it. The husband's a very passive, calm guy like myself that doesn't like drama but thinks logical like most men. Hard
Hmm.
worker, don't like all that loud hoorah, hoorah, and all that. But I had to tell him women don't like to make decisions. So those points and times where your wife is acting like this and she seems strong, you still have to step up
Yeah.
and still lead and do things like that. So the miracle that came about was I had to pray for them, talk to her about grace and forgiveness with my father. Also, like God's gonna work it out. What was meant for bad will turn to good. So I prayed over them. They had a conversation with my dad this morning, and everything they've been fearing, it went perfectly smooth. God ironed everything out without a hiccup. And then one of her family members down in where they're gonna get a chapel at said, "Hey, you can have the whole wedding in my backyard reception. I got DJs. Now I get to preside over the wedding again once it was canceled." So the beauty of it all in a short span was, what do you see and what do you believe and what's gonna come true? And the reality of it is for anybody here in today, man, you did not get this far without God. And he ain't left you. Now I don't know people's faith base or whatever, but this is what I'm explaining. This is what I believe, for truth of life. And then for when she's finally stepped out of that into an area that she's not good at, they're both being stretched. The blessing came through. Now they don't have to worry about spending no money. Now everybody can come. Now all of a sudden I could present like, and it was just a blessing because I don't get the glory. God does, but it also through situations like this, God brings people closer and reconciling relationships if you're willing to move past the subject, if you're willing to talk about it, if you're willing to hear the other person's side in spite of. And everybody's different. Not everybody can handle that. But it's at least being honest with yourself and assessing what something is for what it is. So that's kind of what I was trying to backdeal him on everything that happened with me last night and kind of how it's turned itself on its face this morning. So, all that.
About you, AC. We just doing it's all freestyle. It's open bar right now, man. So everybody just getting bars off, and then we'll get
Yeah.
into, I got a couple prompts and
Yeah.
whatnot. Just want to see where everybody's at
Yeah.
and whatnot.
No, I mean, I think a couple things kind of resonate with me as you were kind of talking through your situation, G. I said the first thing was just you know, I definitely connected on the father tip. My dad, while he was there most of the time, my mother was the breadwinner in the house, right? And so my dad didn't fill that traditional father role where he was the breadwinner and kind of the leader of the household. So I found that, and he had issues with substance abuse and other things like that. But as I got older, my dad would often overreach with his expectations of what he could do, right? And so, um, for me, being logical of mind and kind of thinking through things, I knew oftentimes when he would say things, I knew in the back of my mind, like, this is his wants, right? These things he wants to do. There might be a little bit of ego in there, right? But I really know at the end of the day, like, he don't make money like that. He ain't really in a situation where he can do a lot of the things that he's kind of preaching, right? And so, for me, a lot of time it was just honest conversation, kind of, really getting to, things you do to show your loved ones you love them don't have to be these grandiose, these huge things, right? They can be small, right? Hell, we could do a wedding in the backyard. You know what I mean? I don't need $20,000 to have a wedding, right? Really, when you have family and loved ones, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you got the domino table out, or whatever, right? We can get down right here.
Hey, you already know.
Yeah, so that was one thing. I think the other thing you kind of that kind of resonated in my mind as you were talking was just communication, right? I think culturally in America, right, we teach people it's a win-lose, right? For me to win, you got to lose. But the reality is, man, we can create this space in between me and you, right? We can throw our differences out there, but at the end of the day, it's not really about winning or losing, man. It's just coming to an understanding between us, right? And so there are some things we're going to vibe on, some things we may not vibe on, but that's okay. You know what I mean? So really just understanding like expectation management, communication, it's extremely important. And yeah, those two things that kind of resonate me as you were talking, man. So thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that word, expectation management. I like the way you said that, because as a person standing on the outside as a third party, that's exactly what I see when I'm watching these people. I'm like, when you're communicating, you have a predetermined expectation of what a response should be or how they should respond, or they should know better most of the time. And then you don't know. And that causes just that barrier, that wall or breakdown within communication just off of that person, off of that.
Just off of assumptions, yeah.
Man, kind of digesting all this, man. It's just
No, yeah, it's no rush. It's like,
yeah,
it's just how it comes and goes. Whatever comes on your heart, however it come out, man. Like, it's not nothing like that.
Yeah, for me, not just to me. I think there are just when you talk about just relationships, right? It's just like my background. My father is born in Mississippi. Raised in the deep South. Kind of grew up between Mississippi, Tennessee, and Chicago. And I just think, as I think through that part of my family, man, like the stuff is extremely layered and nuanced, and it gets to like there are just just deeper points of emphasis that come to mind as I think through just like my own personal relationship with my dad, you know what I mean, and kind of what he's been through. Understand that. I mean, when I talk about like coming from the dirt, man, the dude I'm talking about abandoned by his parents, raised by in-laws he barely knew, eating dinner with the dogs because he couldn't eat at the table with the regular, you know what I mean, and just like all the, and so it really resonates, man, because I just think about all the good my dad has wanted to do in his life, but may have not had the tools to do them. You know, I may not have the financial backing to do them, right? Kind of leaned a little bit too forward because he was so eager to provide for his family that he ended up on. So, yeah, you know what I mean? And just like as the next generation growing up and being able to see that, you know what I mean? And being able to, digest that and kind of have that honest feedback with my father and let him know that regardless of what you can or cannot do, man, the love is real and it's strong and it's forever. You know what I mean? And so letting him know it's okay not to always meet the mark, right? Mm-hmm. It's okay to function within your sphere, within what is realistic. Like, yeah, man, just some definitely some deep feelings, man. And just it's definitely layered and nuanced.
So let me ask you this: with it being so layered and nuanced, especially on a generational level, I know you talked about the level. In a way, it's an ascension to your dad because he preceded you, right? Just like you succeeded your dad. your kids succeeded you. So how does that factor into your situation with your own? You see where I'm going with this?
Dude, yeah, that's deep. Say what's up, Lil. Say what's up.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
D, that's a great question, man. For real. Like I'm actually going through my own mental gymnastics right now, man. Like, my dad he was an authoritarian. Do you know what I mean? Like it was his way or the highway, right? You were with the program, you was getting the beat down, right? And so I was scared of my dad. Like there was parts of me that was fearful of him. You know what I mean? When he spoke, it was no joke, right? And so it's interesting, man, because you talk about the pendulum swinging, right? Like he was very much authoritarian. So I come into my relationship with my kids, man, the pendulum kind of swings back because I realize the things I didn't have, those relationships I didn't have, those conversations I didn't have, right? Just all the things that come with that, right? I relied on others to find connection with my father. And so like when the pendulum swings back, with my own kids, man, like, I've tried so hard, I don't want to say not to be my dad, but there are lessons learned in hard love.
Ooh,
Do you know what I mean? There's got to be a balance to it. But there are definitely
everything
there
in
were
life is
definitely
about balance.
yeah,
To
there's
me,
definitely lessons to be learned in hard love. And like with my oldest son, man, I realized when he was younger, man, I used to put him in football and he'd be in basketball and karate. And educationally, he was really gifted. But whenever he did something that he didn't get immediately, his initial like inclination was to quit. Do you know what I mean? And so like instead of like the stick to itiveness and making him push through some of that stuff, I didn't want to make him do something he didn't want to do because I had a fear that he would hate either me for it or he would hate whatever it is I was trying to
attention.
get him to do. Yeah.
Right.
And so I go, okay. And as he's gotten older, I've realized some of that muscle memory that's been created, right? When things get hard to give up, which is not
That's
conducive
not,
to being a little young man,
right.
right? Has started to kind of take set within his own personal psyche, right? And so, you know, in my younger self having kids at a young age and realizing that the pendulum swung the other way, but it swung too far, I think, in my mind, right? So,
So do you find yourself um, with it swinging maybe a bit further than you would expect? Does that put you in a situation where now you're? I think that's a good thing in a way. We're self-correcting, and
yeah,
sometimes almost real time because we see
yeah,
ourselves maybe not so much in the moment, but
yeah,
after we replay it and we step off and we have time to kind of digest, it's like
yeah,
I did kind of
yeah.
go overboard. Do you find yourself doing that?
I think I'm somewhat of a realist when it comes to my kids. My son's about to be 16. Do you know what I mean? And so at this point in his life, I feel like the time when you're most influential are those younger years. Once they hit high school, sophomore, junior year, like you're get down. No, 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 get down. Your influence kind of starts to wane. Do you know what I mean? And
Because
now
they have
friends,
all these other
yeah,
external.
you got others, and friends become
Yeah,
much more influential and shit like that. And so, at this point in his life, really, my goal is to try to be a guiding light for him as much as possible, realizing that if he doesn't want to take the words coming out my mouth from a place of love, right, and care, that sometimes you got to learn on your own. It's going to be a little, you got to learn the hard way.
say
um
you don't listen, you feel.
yeah, but I tell you what, man, I know that I'll always be around in the background. At some point in time, he's going to fall. You know what I mean? It's going to be my job to kind of, that'll be my opportunity to kind of get shit in conversations. Hush up. I see it, Dad. Yeah. The other thing I would say is this. One thing I've learned about myself. I see you. You get the money, man. Other thing I've learned just through my journey personally is that I had my son and my daughter back to back. And something that was super important to me was to make sure my daughter was self-confident, right? As a young woman, being self-confident was extremely important to me because if you're not confident as a young woman, there's gonna be a lot of people trying to get over on you. I expected my son to be confident. As a young man, I thought he would naturally become confident. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I didn't pour as much into him from a confidence perspective that I poured into my daughter. And now I'm seeing as he's gotten older, some of my
How it's
lacking
affected.
things
Oh
I could
wow.
have. Yes, yes. So I have conversations with him all the time, and I've been forthcoming with him in that, and realizing his lack of confidence in certain areas, and realizing that was me, right? That was me not leaning into him when I should have when he was younger. And so for me, it's we're at where we're at, right? That's kind of water under the bridge. And so for me, it's like I just got to do what I got to do to kind of try to course correct as much as possible. And we're going to get through it the hard way, but we're going to get through it
You're still
eventually.
gonna get
So
through it.
yeah, man. Yeah, those are
Um,
my.
follow up question to that, right? With that being said, you talk about staying in the moment. I know that's kind of
D,
what's up?
D,
Yo,
your volume is rather low. I don't know if it's low on your end, but it's pretty low coming through here. Are you close to the percent?
what about now? Can you hear me?
Okay, maybe it's just me then.
No,
I
I
don't know.
just turned it up a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you clear.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to be as overwhelming. I wanted equal volume. But I noticed I was a little bit further back from the microphone. Is that a little bit better? Okay.
It's about the same to me. Volume, clarity's fine. Volume's kind of low, but it could be my device.
Okay. No, I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. Anyway, keep pushing.
All right, what about now? About the same?
Yeah.
About the same? How are you reading me, AC?
You sound good on my end,
Go ahead, man.
but I got the earpiece.
Yeah, that's my.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. So not accounting for different devices and acoustics or whatever, right? So here's the follow-up question to that.
It's all
right?
good. No, I mean I can still hear you. It just seemed like you're asking the questions. You were low, and I could hear. I could hear my man's louder.
Yeah, I need that. It's all good.
AC a little louder than that.
Yeah.
So it's probably the headphones thing. Don't worry, keep it pushing. But actually,
You want to say
yeah,
anything on
AC man, you made a point, man. Like when that regards to the father situation, like trying not to be. And I've told Derek this story before. Was if I didn't know exactly all the vices that my father had not to be like,
that?
I only witnessed the vices that I saw and said I don't want to be there or do that. But as a child, you never really grasp how they got there, what decisions, who they were,
You talking
the
about
balance of life, right? You don't realize that until you're the parent in the situation and your kid's like, well, why ain't you doing this or doing that? And you're like, blood, if you only knew what kind of stuff I'm doing behind closed doors, you feel me? And what I've been through in this life before you even got here that I'm operating underneath. So like you were right in those fundamental developmental years.
Yeah.
But the shift is not necessarily that your voice falls on that they reject it as they get older. It's just the message has to be changed. The foundation is the same. You're still teaching self-confidence. You're still teaching importance of who you are, foundational things. You're trying to establish core values, you know what I mean, and affirmity. But what they're also doing is they're watching you outside of what you say. And if what makes the voice null and void or change or whether or not they're going to take it is if you are consistent, you, I, or whomever the lead is consistent in our actions to reflect that. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going through the same thing with my 16-year-old daughter. And that kind of, but I had to boost her up. I've had to let her know her value because at the end of the day, as much as I praise her and tell her about who she is, she's coming to believe it. I am aware, like you're aware, that self-awareness and self-accountability and knowing yourself is far more important than the school books because that's going to be your work ethic. That's going to be if you're going to get easily manipulated. That's if, like, you know what I mean? You don't know yourself. Everybody's going to have you swaying left and right because, again, when they out. That's their choices. But I think for your son, as I got my other boys that are younger, and I understand exactly what you're talking about of what's invested and what's not. I think for the son perspective, they just don't show it as teenagers that they're sucking on it like they were when they were 7 or 6.
Yeah.
Right? It's not cool to show that.
Exactly.
But deep down inside, they're still hanging on your every word. Your words are still having impact, and they're just not going to come tell you you were right 90% of the time. Right? But sometimes, and even Derek's seen this, is as you sow that seed, it comes to bear fruit and show you like, oh, dang, she done spit back or he done said something that I told him back when he was 8 and he remembered that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But you don't know because they don't always show you that they're receiving it, or if they start doing bad or they start making mistakes or start defining the principles, you're like, are you like, what am I doing here? Am I giving you anything? But realistically, like you said, keeping it simple, they always want your time.
Definitely.
And attention.
Nothing else.
You feel me? That's it.
No,
Like,
I
it's
appreciate
not
that.
grandiose.
One thing I realized about being a parent, man, it's just a bunch of consistency. It's the same messages over and over in different kind of formats, trying to get. And from time to time, he'll say things right that'll pop up, and I go, okay, I got that one. That's resonating, right? And it's a little tally mark. Okay, we're moving in the right direction. It's just I think I have a lot of guilt personally, specifically, especially with my oldest son, right? Because I realized I just didn't. I don't know. We give all our kids are gonna have some sort of baggage coming out of as they go into adulthood, and my goal has always been to kind of limit that and kind of always be available and always be communicative and always just be there. You know what I mean? When you realize you've effed up a little bit, you know what I mean? I think it's a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, but I still stay resolute, right, and having those conversations as necessary to try to get him to where he needs to be. But it's a struggle sometimes. So,
But I think therein lies the difference between our generation and the previous generation. You know, the standpoint of self-correcting. You know, the standpoint of having a sense of accountability and a duty to make things right for our kids and to be open about it, be transparent about it. Our parents didn't necessarily exhibit that. They weren't necessarily always physically present to be emotionally present as much as we are now, because we see the effect that it's, like you said, we see the effect that it has on us and some of our flaws and insecurities and imperfections, and then we're able to take inventory and self-correct, et cetera, and try to further that along for our kids. That's what it's all about. I think, but that's what I'm saying. At the basis, that's what separates us from the previous generation. And not just that, you said something poignant too, from the standpoint of as much as possible, limiting um, those negative and toxic experiences. But I think wherever we don't show up in those regards, we owe it to our kids, et cetera, as far as giving them the tools, or at least showing them different methods and ways where they can get through certain things or overcome certain obstacles. But I think it ultimately comes back to what you were talking about earlier in the conversation, allowing them to go through adversity, to build that muscle memory, that emotional callus of sorts. So when they get through the tougher goings in life, they're able to navigate that a little bit better, maybe a little bit easier. It won't always be smooth. It's gonna be choppy, but at least they'll have the wherewithal to be able to. Oh well, I remember Pop said this, and yeah, we used to do this to get through. We used to listen to music, and we used to play cards and drink orange juice and apple juice, and I used to, think I was drinking alcohol, and he's drinking whiskey, and I'm just drinking the apple. But I mean, it's those are the type of muscle memories, literal and figurative, that are built along the way that we can give them and set them up for to where they can tap back into. I think I heard G at one time or another say it's about manufacturing memories, manufacturing moments, being able to etch a particular point in time where a conversation took place and maybe it preceded a storm, it preceded a negative experience. So that way they have that to home in on and use it as a reference point.
yeah.
Um, 2 cents.
Yeah. Hey, remember, hey, I've had having conversations with my son AJ, man. I've told him, like, as we go through things in this stage of his life, there's going to be at some point in time down the road, right, when he's 20, 25, 30, where he's going to look back. Things are going to make sense. He's going to understand the why, right? And I told him that, as we don't always agree on everything, but I guarantee when he's an adult and out and about in the world, we're going to be best friends, because we're going to have established that foundation, have some of these conversations that'll be beneficial moving forward. But, in the moment, it's still, it can still be tough. You know what I mean? Especially when, like, I think, like, something I've never dealt with. So, like, I'll tell you one thing that's been beneficial to me, like, you were kind of talking about, our parents back in the day that weren't always present. You know what I mean?
Y'all
My
still
parents,
there?
yeah, we here. Neither of my parents were always present because they were always working, right? But their lack of presence forced me to become self-reliant. It forced me to build
What?
my own, forced me to create the ability to validate myself, forced
Just
me
don't
to.
sit down space.
I had to be able to kind of move in different spaces and adapt and be confident in my, you know what I mean? I think me being overly available and overly present, right? It's not a hold on, man. There you go, man. It's not a. I don't think I've created those same those characteristics of my son. You know what I mean? So like now my son, he deals with a little bit of depression. You know what I mean? And so that's not something I've dealt with. So I try to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Some
I
do.
got him. I got him in therapy. We're doing that, right? But like he seems to look at the world through this negative
They're
lens.
open on the inside. I don't know if
You
they're
know what
open
I'm
on the
saying?
inside.
So
Hey,
for
G,
me, when
you
we
got a
talk,
hot mic, G.
so when I talk with him, I'm like, we were talking this morning, and I was like, because he just doesn't seem like a lot doesn't motivate him. And so I'm like, we talk about the lens with which we look through life and how that impacts us as
Oh,
we
they're
move through life.
decorating for Halloween.
I was like, if you look through life through a pessimistic lens, then all you're going to latch onto or capture or catch, all you're going to remember are those pessimistic moments, right?
Yeah.
If you try to be
Hold
optimistic,
on.
you're going to latch onto those good moments. You know what I mean? And so I challenged him. I was like, look, you should challenge every day to find something to be grateful for. Think of one thing. It could be breathing. It could be that I got 5 fingers and 5 toes. It could be that I got food. You know what I mean? It could be that I got whatever. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I'm
relative
trying.
to you, so there's no right and wrong answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to slowly get him to kind of like start to build that muscle memory and those habits. That's the other thing, right? Like at this stage in his life, you're developing habits that are going to take you into adulthood, right? So what are we establishing right now that's going to be beneficial to you? Because guess what? When you leave this house, the world don't give a shit about you. You know what I mean? The world don't care how much you're making,
Nope.
how it looks like, or kind of how you're driving. The world don't care if you ain't got food on your table or clothes on your back, right? So like, how do we build those those self that was good. But you know what I'm saying? Like I'm definitely run through a lot of things that I've not been coached up on and prepared to deal with, and I'm trying to kind of write the manual as I go, and it's definitely there's been some difficulties in it. So
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think it's pertinent to have these kind of conversations, and expose as many people as possible, for the same reasons.
done. I'm all done. Thank you for sharing.
I'm the same way. A lot of times it's all first verse. I'm freestyling.
Yeah.
And me and G have talked about that at great length as well. What are some of the ways that you're able to stay in the moment and you're able to self-check and correct and be able to teach them lessons on the fly, even as you're discovering in your own, your reflection time or your self-care time?
Sure. Great question. For me, it's vulnerability, man. It's for me, it's trying to be transparent in what I know and don't know, and yeah, something that I didn't get from my father. To me, my father was all knowing. What he said was just what it was, whether I agree with it or not. I was have to get down with things. So if I didn't, it just what it is what it was. It was what it was. You know what I mean? But with my son, like I attempt to be as transparent. And if it's something I'm not versed on or something I'm trying to figure out or something I just don't understand, like I'll try to verbalize that to him. But then I follow that up with just my own experiences from my experiences as a 40-year-old man. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. You still have something to add, even if it's something
yeah,
you may not
yeah.
necessarily be versed in.
I got educated parenting just based off my experiences, but it's still new. And so like I try to impart that on him, right? Because I'm not all knowing and I do mess up. I know and I do mess up and I'm not perfect. And so yeah, just that transparency piece and just trying to be authentic in how I communicate with him is just that's how I try to get after it.
What about you, G? Hey, G Money. You making a Mickey D's run.
He doing the dad thing. So
I think for me, I think that's a great point of a transition. I think for me, some of the things I'm able to do in the moment is just being more of an active listener. You know what I'm saying? To try to understand their viewpoint.
it's
Especially
hard.
it is extremely hard, especially when you want to get your bars off, you want to be able to give them sound advice or sound discipline in some instances. And a lot of times we don't do a very good job at just really gauging what's going on. What is the root of what's going on? What from their position, what are they saying? How are they feeling? And you said something great from the standpoint of vulnerability, but it has to go both ways. And it's kind of like you were saying, um, it was the way it was, you know. Um, our folks, especially our fathers and man types, they didn't always exhibit that quality. They weren't always expressive about being vulnerable and how they felt. Um, and I think that's in reference to what you were saying about the pendulum. Those are the things that we're able to pick up along the way, having to be more self-reliant like you were, and and what we try to do to incorporate that into our parenting styles. You know what I'm saying? Um, but one thing I just try to be more of an active listener. I try not to listen for the sake of responding all the time. I have a habit of doing that, just like a lot of us do. Like you just can't wait for them to finish, so you can finish chewing them out, or you can finish giving them whatever wisdom you're trying to give them, and not just allowing them to free flow. Don't try to constrict the conversation. Allow them to get their bars off, if you will. You hear me use that reference a lot. Allow them to just freestyle and just because they're not used to that, in as much as you're not used to it. You know what I'm saying? And think about how you feel when you're in a manner where you feel like this is a safe space. And this is a space where I can be transparent and I can be genuine. I can do and say anything without judgment or reproach. Why not afford them that same opportunity? And like you said, and that's towards building that muscle memory. That's towards etching those milestones,
Yeah.
presenting those points in time where they can reference back. I remember when me and dad were going through this, and he was real vulnerable in one particular time because him and mom wasn't together anymore. And he was saying how hard it was for him to get through it. Like that humanizes the situation in a lot of regards. So it puts them at ease. It gives them the platform and it gives them the license or the permission to be able to be as vulnerable. Um, but
I
yeah,
tell you, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I tell you what, yeah, I have issues with active listening. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. That's why I
yeah,
said
good
we
point.
all
And
do.
I
That's
try. I
yeah,
try so hard just let him talk, let my son just kind of just in your words get his bars off and say what he wants to say, right? The struggle that I have is sometimes I just need to let him say what he says and just acknowledge it and walk away. The struggle I have is I find that oftentimes when he talks about his issues and problems, it's always somebody else's fault. It's always something else, right?
exactly.
There's
Yeah,
a general lack of like self-acknowledgement, right? In any situation you're ever in, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, you got some playing it, right? Whether you're
oh
the
yeah,
major part or the minor part, you got something, right?
right.
So like I've always tried to teach them, like, hey man, like if you got trouble making friends at school, before you look at everybody else, let's look at how we function in that space, right? How do we present ourselves? Do we put ourselves out there? Are we genuinely looking for friends? Are we looking just for, you know what I mean? And so like that's my biggest fault is when he's trying to talk to me and he's talking about his issues and his problems. I do agree. I need to just let him just talk and spit and just like acknowledge his thoughts, right? And maybe at a different time come back and talk to like, hey, how do we get after making new friends, or how do we get after finding things we're interested
You
in,
had
right?
time to digest. Yeah,
Right. And so like for me, it's just I'll try to sit back and listen, and then when I hear it once, I acknowledge I hear it. I let him talk. I hear it a second time. Third time I'm jumping in. Poof. You know what I mean? And so that ends up really what it does in the day, just shuts him down, right? And it just feels like
yeah.
he can't communicate because I don't understand. So you know, yeah, active listening is huge, man. So like, yeah, thanks for sharing that, man.
Bring
It's
it back,
important.
swing it back to you. Appreciate that, man. I'm swinging it back to you, G. The question was, as far as building those moments in time, et cetera, that we had kind of talked about. What are some ways that you're able to stay in the moment, stay present, and you're able to teach on the fly, maybe a lesson you're still dealing with, or you haven't quite notched on your belt. What are some ways that you're able to stay present and able to kind of build those moments? You and I talked about manufacturing moments, right? Building moments. Um,
Yeah.
how are you able to do that? How are you able to stay in present in the moment and be able to do that?
By being intentional, by being intentional, that's the premise that I want to come with. I'm looking for the fact that I'm not trying to most of the time I try not to default on trying to handle it on my own because I understand my limitations. So with that understanding my limitations, I understand that like I got to take it slow because I've had experiences where you just take it for granted and be lax. You don't want to press too hard, kind of let them come to you, and then realize that they're not going to come to you like they need to be plucked out or they need to be, you know what I mean, addressed or heard. So I think for me, staying in the moment, part of it is I realized too that if I create a platform for them to, my primary goal is to create a platform where it's safe for them to do that, practice that. Because I do understand the value of not having that ability to speak to my parents or have secrets or whatever the case may be. It was actually detrimental to my health because I wasn't able to allow to see that my parents were actually there to help me. So my goal and emphasis in staying locked in is regurgitating and reemphasizing the fact that look at who's talking to you, look at what I've done, look at how I've responded. This is my intentions. I've showed you this. I've not only talked about it, but I've showed you. I come to you when I'm not perfect, but staying in the moment is being slow, driving slow. Life is coming fast. You gotta drive it slow. Like it's those little words, them little keywords that somebody will say. They were like, "Oh, I did this and I did this." Or I thought about it, and I was like, hold on, man, you slick. You too, you little slick at your age. You'll try to twist that right word my way to get me to look the other way and be like everything cool. And me being the parent, I might have a tired day and I don't want to dig deeper. So I'm like, okay, hopefully they doing better. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, okay. And then every time it feel like you do that, you get burned almost. You know what I'm saying? Like they fall back. So then it's like, okay, I've had to show grace. I've had to show mercy. And a lot of what it does is I put my thank you. I put myself in that situation. Um, and I try to do the whole I weigh it out, right? Eye for an eye. Is that offense or that issue really worth me going to cloud nine or cloud 10 or for this issue?
In the grand scheme.
In the grand scheme of things, like
Yeah.
plus it's a control over your own emotions. I care for my child. Oh, but that's why people parents say, I'm not gonna let you run me into the grave. I'm not gonna let you kill me, right? Because you don't want to listen or do this, that, and the third. Well, the perspective is I'm doing everything I can to love on you. Do woo woo woo. We talked about this, man. Like the main thing that allows me to stay locked in is because God. Like he shows me when I look at talking to my child, I see myself. And it's like the part where I can't talk to my younger self, I'm looking at my child and this is my opportunity to talk to my younger self. Like everything that I learned and I messed up on and the lessons that I got, because I know some of this is going to rub down to you. You know what I'm saying? Some by default, because of you're my child and my DNA, some of my struggles. I hope they don't. Some of my whatever. I hope they don't. But in order to do that,
Hey,
I
G, you
be
made a good
present.
point. You made a good
Go
point,
ahead.
man. You talked about speed. And it made me think about tempo, right? A lot of times we see things in our kids that aren't in line with what we want, or we think of a better way of doing it, or just there's something, right? And we want to correct the issue now. Stop yelling. We want to correct the issue now. And so tempo is important, right? 'Cause I think sometimes as parents we get caught speeding a little bit. We're so focused on getting to the end point, we don't do the work in the in between. We think we're going to have one conversation, things are going to change. It's not the case, right? And so I had a conversation with my mom. I had a conversation with my mom, and she was like, she talked about tempo and speed. She was like, life is crazy, man. It's up, it's down, it changes. There's trials, tribulations, and she said, when you're unsure, she said, when you're unsure, she's like, just be still for a little bit, right? Let things come to you. Life has a funny way of showing you the path, right? And so if you pay attention, just be still. Don't try to speed through issues. You'll figure out how to get to the other end, and you'll be better for it. So, something resonated. Man. I was want to share that.
No, I like that, man. Um, hmm. I got one more. I got one more question. We can kind of wrap it up because I know everybody's trying to get into their day, spending family time and whatnot, and trying to get their own personal time. So, last question, and then we'll open it up for closing remarks if y'all want to sign off or anything else y'all want to get off your heart. Um, you heard me reference as far as the importance in doing these type of sessions, right? from the standpoint of building, edifying one another, sharing, being vulnerable with like-minded people, that type of thing. Um, I'm gonna call this a build and destroy, build and destroy. So we all are building towards something, right? In our own lives, right? In our own sort of ministry, if you will, right? What we're doing on the job, what we're doing in the home, what we're doing out in society. Um, Give me one thing, and it ain't got to be the work, it ain't got to be the job. It can be just anything you're doing in your own therapy session, your personal sessions, times with family, etc. What's one thing that you're doing to build, and then what's one thing you've had to destroy or eliminate out of your life in order to build?
Hmm, that's a great question. I'll say a two. I think I got one for me personally. Um, one thing we talked about this. The one thing I've had to learn to build is boundaries. Right, learning that I can't be all things to all people, and that it's okay to fail from time to time. But boundaries are essential to making sure that I keep myself grounded and me rooted in me, and not losing, uh, the sense of who I am. Right, who Archie is at the core.
Yeah.
So I've not done a great job of that in my life. I've always tried to be present all the time. And it's a recipe for disaster. So something I've tried to build is boundaries. And it's okay not to be perfect and everything to everyone. One thing I've had to destroy is the idea that I can do everything by myself. Like I said, growing up, like, my parents were both, working, and I spent a lot of time by myself, kind of just figuring things out myself. And I just became
Yeah.
extremely independent. Independence is good to a point, right? But no one does things alone. And so, in my professional life, I think I've been pretty good at doing things as a team. Personally, I've always been very independent and like I'll handle it. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
not having boundaries and being everything to everybody and then being independent on top of that just puts a lot of stress
Double work.
on one person, right? And so for me, it's definitely building boundaries and destroying the need to be, you know, uh, just an individual in my personal life, and realizing that the team concept that you learn about in the military or in sports really applies to life as well. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, those are my two inputs.
Yeah. Especially with regard to building boundaries, because in a way it kind of facilitates the latter, doesn't that?
Yeah.
Um, Give me like when you say boundaries, are you referring to the job, or just referring in general? And then how much
I,
does time factor into setting those boundaries?
yeah, I think when I talk about boundaries, it's definitely more personal. I feel like in the military, you definitely have the rank and structure hierarchy, which kind of sets artificial boundaries already, right? They're kind of
Yeah, by
there.
default.
So yeah, by default. And so I understand, depending on like kind of my rank and sphere, here are the things I can and cannot do. That's easy. Um, for me, when I talk boundaries, I'm definitely talking more personal, right? And so, in your personal life, it's like, it's like parenting, right? There's no playbook for it. You're just trying to figure things out and kind of do the best you can. And so,
Why?
I just found myself spreading myself just super thin. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like we talked a couple of weeks ago, right? Like, if you got the dartboard, where are you at on those rings? Those centric circles as they kind of move out from the center. Where are
That was
you
a
at? Right?
great analogy.
And I realized like I was nowhere near the middle, man. I was way out in the periphery. You know what I mean? And so just all sense of self loss. You know what I mean? Things I used to do, I didn't do anymore. Friends I used to have, I didn't have anymore. The things I would do to de-stressify, you know what I mean? Just to kind of chill. Didn't know what they were anymore. If I didn't have my wife or kids or something to do, it was like, what does Archie want to do? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Not
and so
used to it.
you just lose it, man. And so
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've been slowly trying to get back to that, man. And so, is it a timely process? Absolutely. Because I'm trying to break muscle memory. You know what I mean? And
Trying to
so,
break old habits, and old habits are
you know,
hard to break sometimes.
my kids come to me when I go for bike rides, and typically I'm like, let's go. Every once in a while, they got to hear no. You know what I mean? Get
That's okay for
but
your own sanity.
it's okay for them, or my kids are bored and they want me to figure out something to do, right? It's okay for me to tell them to go outside and figure it out, right? That's how I learned. I sat
Hey,
outside
hey,
bored
hey,
and
hey.
eventually I figured something out, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly.
So like, yeah, just,
And that's how we figured out our boundaries. You figure out how much
oh,
trouble you can
definitely.
get into.
Oh, most
You know?
definitely. Or how to escape trouble.
Hey, look, I'm just saying, it's a little, it comes with the magic,
Yeah,
Some of us got
definitely.
the sauce, some of us, it take a
Yeah,
little longer,
yeah. That's a great question, G man. I'm gonna put that in the. I'm gonna, you know, what was it? How'd you reference it? Breaking and building, or
Build and
build and
destroy.
destroy?
Build and destroy.
Build and
What's
destroy.
one thing you're doing in your life, whether it's
Yeah,
creatively,
yeah,
emotionally, basically this is like the four pillars. It's the four pillar, or if you want to talk about the wheel, right? The wheel of wellness, emotional, spiritual, however you want to word it. But the
yeah,
basics being, what is one thing you're doing day to day, or you're doing or want to do, right? So
yeah,
maybe they haven't thought about, maybe they haven't flushed it out in the form of conversation because you're presenting them a new a new focus,
right.
a new area to aim for. So maybe present it like that from the standpoint of what's one thing you're doing now, what's one thing you're doing day to day, or you want to do to build towards being a better you. And then
Yeah,
what is one thing that you're eliminating or you're reducing in order to build? And then you can
yeah,
give them a playful analogy about, hey, when you see a dilapidated building and you see a
yeah,
sign up for construction, what's needed? They have to wipe away that old thing. They have to pull up the old power lines and water,
yeah,
blah blah blah. They have to
yeah.
rebuild a new foundation, right?
Right.
Once they've established solid land and a solid foundation on that land, then they can begin to erect the rest of the building. You can use that to tie it
Yeah.
all. So with that, I'm gonna present you with the same question, Jay. Are you there? Did you step away again?
Right. Ordering food.
Right. You there, G? G Money. Yo.
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Oh,
Trying
okay.
to multitask.
No, I know, I know. And again, I want to be respectful of
So you
everybody's
said
time.
you said build and break.
Build and destroy. What's one thing you're doing or
Build and
want to
destroy.
do to build a better you?
Um,
One thing you're eliminating to be a better you.
destroying. I'm destroying passiveness. Destroying passiveness and procrastination.
Mm.
Been something that's been a part of my life since I can remember.
Okay,
Um,
let's dig deep. How are you
whether
doing
it's
that? And what areas?
I just had an eye opening when I told you I had that conversation with my cousin, and he just kind of like turned that key just a little bit more to open the door, and just like, oh, okay, I know now what I have to do for my family as a man that I didn't know before, that my dad never taught me, my mom never taught me, but I'm just now getting in how to be balanced in being delicate and assertive at the same time. Like my spirit is delicate, but my job requires me to be hard. You feel me? So I got to be stretched in the area to be,
Right.
I don't say hard, but tougher, to be
More
more,
assertive.
yeah, more assertive, more direct in giving direction and leading. I was leading from behind, if that makes any sense.
Well, let me
I
let me
was
ask
leading
you
from
this.
the back of the room.
Let
You
me
feel
ask
me?
you
Like,
this.
but I need to lead from the front.
What preceded that conversation? Just to refresh it, so we kind of have a reference point.
What preceded that conversation was, I think it was just simply understanding for my cousin. It was some practical knowledge. It wasn't even on no spiritual stuff.
Right.
It was just practical knowledge about the operation and communication of men and women. And with the limited resources that I had to tap into on how to do that, it pretty much was like, I'm trying to love on my wife through sweet gifts, massages, and all these things of affection. But what she wants is accountability. She wants stability. She wants direction. Like, and I'm like, well, those are all three things that I didn't really grow up with. So, you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
know
No,
I'm
I
purpose for it, right? So how do I go about it? And it just so happened like I had piece tools together along the way. It was just, this was that missing key to just be like, bro, this is your fear. You just got to get over yourself and whether or not you're going to make a right or wrong decision And I had to kill. What it is destroying the people pleaser. Destroying the people pleaser in me. And I'm actually able to share that with my sister now, who's been dealing with that with my dad. Like, that's what that key was. It was like, I'm secure in who I am. I don't have to disrespect you to stand my ground. I can adapt to your environment, but what I won't do is deny my truth and who I am and what I have to say to you. Like, for instance, we're in this conversation right now. I don't know my man AC from Adam. You know what I'm saying? What his belief system is, where you know where he stand, and I could stay shook off the fact that I keep talking God this, God that, and that may not be his MO, right? But I'm me. I accept him where he at. That's the difference. I'm not gonna shy or worry about if I'm too overbearing as my personality, not if in a situation, but my personality as a whole. Oh, people don't accept me or this, that, and the third. I gotta adapt. That's what I'm killing. I'm killing that and building accountability. You know what I'm saying? And building accountability through action, and actually not just holding myself accountable, but not running from holding other people accountable just because they can't handle it or their feelings may be hurt. So that's what I'm at right there.
A lot like boundaries to me there, AC.
All right, when he said the people pleasing piece, that resonated really hard.
But that's hard. But let's put it in perspective, right? Because lifestyle sometimes give it a different determination, right? Our lifestyle in the military, yours being a senior enlisted leader, right? In a certain kind of peculiar world, it's kind of your job to please people from the standpoint of keeping morale high and while still furthering the mission and meeting the objectives of the leaders, right? So it's all everything is all context, right? Everything
Yep.
has a certain level of limitation and a certain level of embellishment based on the lifestyle, right? So
Right.
let me put the question back to you. Hearing what G had to say about his own journey, right? And how important it is for him to thine own self be true, as it were. How are you able to navigate in your world, being true to you while still kind of placating to the environment of call it for what it is? We have to kind of be people pleasers to a
Yeah.
certain degree. How does that
I tell,
resonate?
that's an interesting question. I'd say I think it evolves as the longer you stay in the military and kind of where you're at positionally within an organization.
Yeah.
I'm at a place now where like retirement is on the horizon. I'm in a place now where I'm the SEO for my organization. I don't really feel like I need to placate anymore, to be honest with you. If I go back to when I was younger,
Because you
I
were
tried to be
still ascending and
when I was younger, man, I tried to I tried to be true to myself. I tried to be true with my craft. I tried to be true to people. But if I'm honest with you, there was times when I was more worried about people pleasing, especially when it was folks above me. And I would tell you a word that G said that resonated was fear, right? And I think we all, to some extent, have some sense of fear, right? Whether it's, hey, am I going to turn this dude or this chick off by what I say, or let me kind of like dull my words because I don't want them to take it the right or wrong way, right? And so for me, learning to get past my fear, and to some extent, I still deal with my fear. I'm still in my fear. You know what I mean? Is something that I'm consistently working on. To answer your original question, where I'm at right now in my career, I don't have much fear because there's not much anybody can do to me anymore. I'm on the downslope. I'm at 22. I'm already ready to push the button. So I think it changes. Baby. Yeah, it changes how you approach your day to day. But I don't know. You gotta figure out how to tote that line without losing sense of self. I'll tell you, I deal with a lot of young senior airmen, like the young airmen right now, right? A lot of dudes from dudes from the mud, dudes from the country, dudes that grew up in a certain space.
Still got that grit and grime on them.
Yep, and they're dealing with that, right? I had a conversation with one young man the other day, and I mean, smart dude, man, BTZ guy, but I can see on his day to day, he deals with the fear of being labeled one of them. You know what I mean? Or being, you know what I mean? Like kind of falling, falling out of the group, right? What's that? Yeah, he deals with that. He deals with perception from his peers, and so learning that you can be yourself, be real, still kind of function within the space that is the military, what they expect of you. Kind of communicating that is important, and then just figuring out how you do it personally, right? Because it's different for everybody, but it's doable. And so, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. I kind of
No,
went
you
off,
did.
but yeah.
No, you did. Well, and I think what you're more or less alluding to is the fact that it's a process. It's a process, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes you do better than others. Sometimes it takes you a little bit of time, situation dependent. Sometimes because it draws certain elements of your natural personality, you're able to knock it out as quick or be more efficient because that's something you're used to dealing with, right? But the other stuff, rather uncomfortable, like you said with the one, CRM, being uncomfortable because it's not necessarily his crowd or his cup of tea, but
Wouldn't
still
be one of the fellas.
being one of the fellas, but still attacking it from, okay, what is my identity? What is my identity amongst all of this? And that could be daunting. You know, that senior airman at E4 is no different than he's not that far removed from our kids. He's only what, a lot of times, 3, 4 years off. So it can be daunting. But yeah, man, on that note, that's the closing segment. I appreciate it, man. Appreciate y'all tapping in for an hour or so. We're gonna try to do this every other week, if possible. Schedule dependent. Obviously, I know people are going to have have various things going on, but whoever's there, we're gonna have a good session. We're gonna have a good time and share some good
Yeah.
stuff, man. That's what it's all about. On that
Hey,
Hey
note,
D,
man, I appreciate.
go ahead.
go ahead, G.
Go ahead, G.
Oh no, I just wanted to say straight to you, RG man. I appreciate your transparency. It's been an honor to meet you, even first time around, man. I can feel your spirit through the technology, man. Like you know what I mean. I can tell the genuineness within you, and appreciate again just as a man being transparent about some of the things that have caused you to go a certain way. When we do that, that allows us to heal or grow and become better by confessing it out there amongst people that are invested in doing so. So it's not, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, well, first, D, I appreciate the invite, man. This is anytime we can get in the space and talk, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
G, hey, much to your same sentiment, man. Just the genuineness and just being real in space is awesome. I don't think it's something we do enough of, to be quite honest with you. Oh, hey, stop yelling, man. I don't think it's something we do enough of, to be quite honest with you, man. So anytime I can get online or in person and chop it up, especially with two upstanding folks, man, I'm always down for it, dude. And it's therapy for me. So I definitely appreciate both of you, man. So thanks.
absolutely, man. And just closing on that note,
Appreciate you, DBZ.
man, I'm thankful for two brothers, man. I've built some strong relationships with. I've been up and down the road of life and continuing to build. I just applaud you guys initiative, man, just to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to maybe share your pluses and your minuses, and put it on Front Street. Me and G got this saying, or I kind of had this saying, and G helped me remix it a little bit, right? But I think I made a poster about this a while back with regard to when you have two parties or you have people that are equally invested, right? Equally concerned and genuine about one another's well-being and equally bold about sharing your transparency and vulnerability, nobody feels robbed. Nobody feels like they didn't give a lot, or they didn't get a lot of get a lot out of the situation. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's being transparent and genuine. Everyone's getting their bars off, so to speak. So in that sense, nobody feels cheated. And there's no robbery in a fair exchange, bro. There's no robbery in fair exchange. We got people like-minded, um, and they're all in for one another, and that's what I'm trying to build, man. So I just appreciate you guys coming together and acknowledge that within one another, and hopefully y'all can sidebar Because I believe both of y'all have plenty to add to one another's life, if nothing else other than these sessions, man. So appreciate y'all, man. We tap in next week or the week after. I'll shoot an invite soon enough, man. But I appreciate y'all for tapping in, bro.
Y'all take it easy, man.
All right, you too.